So if you haven't heard already, a survey's been flying around the interwebs about Mists of Pandaria. So over the past week, it looks like Blizzard have been gauging the interest in who actually wants MoP Classic and who doesn't. Now, while I've been saying all along this is fairly obvious that we're going to get it because it's loads more digital deluxe editions that they can sell on mounts and pets, with actually pet sales on the store during Mists of Pandaria when there's actually pet battles probably being quite lucrative for them. But my only real negative remark, and this is coming from someone who absolutely cannot wait for Mists of Pandaria, and I'm already making members only content each week, they really need to put more effort into MoP than they have with Cataclysm, because let's be honest, that has been a little bit neglected. Now, if they stick to the rough release schedule they announced earlier in the year, then we know Firelands is imminent. In fact, it's already been said that it's meant to be coming in October. Now, we've already had one test weekend, and I would have thought the next test weekend would have actually been this weekend just gone, but that wasn't the case for some reason, which kinda has confused me, but hopefully we'll get some news on that in the next few days, and it'll actually be next weekend with a launch the week after. But what we also know is we shouldn't expect to actually be in Firelands for too long, because Dragon Soul will be coming in January. So if Firelands in October, and then Dragon Soul in January, quite honestly, to say that we're in October, or about to be in October now, should I say, there's really not that much left of Cataclysm in general, which I actually see as a good thing. And the reason I see it as a good thing is because bulk standard out the box, MoP has a lot more content. It's got a lot more solo player content, small player content like 5-mans, challenge modes, obviously heroic dungeons, which are just stupidly easy. They're comparable to the heroics from Wrath of the Lich King, I would say. And then you've even got scenarios and heroic scenarios, which are 3-man. Now, there's tons of scenarios, but they don't all actually come at launch. They do come with each phase. There's a few that are added, and actually, we shouldn't even have heroic scenarios at launch. It should only be normal. We know we get pet battles, bonus roles that you need to farm, lots and lots of dailies, which I'm going to touch on in a minute. Some of the best raids they've ever done, and quite honestly, it's just an amazing expansion. But a hands-off approach for Mists of Pandaria from Blizzard will not work. In my opinion, and whether it's popular or unpopular, I don't know, but it is just my opinion, MoP is, I would say, one of the best expansions they've ever done. It's certainly miles better than Cataclysm, even though I do enjoy Cataclysm. It's just in a state where, like I've said loads of times in the build-up to Cata, without Blizzard doing something and adding stuff to the actual game, it's got a severe lack of content, because back in OG Cata, a lot of development time went into redoing all the quests, redesigning the old zones around flying and the shattering, so they just didn't have time to finish all of the content. Like, there was meant to be more raids, there was meant to be one in Abyssal Moor or Abyssal Depths, whatever it's called, over in Vashir, but obviously that never materialised, which is a damn shame, because that's where Blizzard could do things different now and actually give us more content, or new content to Classic. Which I know, if you want new content, you should be playing, I don't know, seasonal servers like Season of Discovery, or of course retail, but there's no harm in actually adding new content or unfinished content to Classic to give it a little bit of a new breath of life. But you're probably wondering what I mean by they can't take a hands-off approach with MoP, whereas they have with Cata, and kind of got away with it. And that's because in a 5.4.8 state, which is the last patch balancing and everything for raids, dungeons, classes, so the patch that we're used to getting in any of these Classic expansions is actually really steeped in problems. And Blizzard even knew some of these problems back in the day, but publicly said they're just going to wait until the pre-patch for Warlords of Draenor, where they're going to address it. Well, we're hoping to be in MoP for quite a while, and a lot of these problems are going to be extremely evident very, very early on, whereas before they was only really evident for the last patch. We don't want a problem-riddled Classic. I know many of you, and myself included most of the time, see MoP through rose-tinted glasses, but unfortunately, a few of these things that I tell you about, you might even remember and be like, oh yeah, we don't want it like that. Which leads us to a bit of a problem, because Blizzard will need to actually put some development time in, put some thought into the expansion like they've put zero thought into Cata. We don't want that. They cannot do that. But there is one other thing, and it's something that we're probably just going to fall into every time we get a new Classic expansion. We consume content so fast. Blizzard said how accelerated the cadence was going to be for Cataclysm, and I think to many, and I'm not saying everyone, but to many, it still even felt too slow. We do need to be getting through these expansions quite quick. And a prime example of how that is and how good that is and how it works is the Race to World First on retail has only just actually finished, as in, well, one guild has cleared the raid, and there's already new content on the PTR for the anniversary event, which is actually a big standalone patch itself. So we're already testing an anniversary raid before many of us have even killed a boss in Mythic in the current raid yet. That's the sort of cadence we need in Classic. I kind of broke this down into what Blizzard need to do, what we need to accept, what needs to change, and what should be built upon. So things they could even start putting building blocks in for now, before we're even in the MoP pre-patch. That'll all make sense in a minute. So the what Blizzard need to change, like I say, in my opinion, the main thing is really accelerating the cadence through these classic expansions, especially if they decide to do a relaunch and we get like a 2019 classic WoW launch that is going to run through a few expansions again. Like, they just can't last as long. But even the new current classic expansions, like the upcoming Mist of Pandaria, which I feel like is fairly obvious it's going to come, it just needs to be quicker. And then my second point, where I said what we need to accept, we need to accept the fact that actually if Blizzard are just trying to stick to a this is how it was, this is how it's going to be kind of thing, there's not a great deal we can really say, because they delivered Cataclysm Classic and they have accelerated the cadence and made a few tweaks to things like Valor Point gain and it being a rolling seasonal cap and things like that. But overall, you're getting to experience the content again, albeit maybe a little bit slow for some of us. So we shouldn't really expect new content in Classic. Like I said, we should expect new content in the seasonal servers like Season of Discovery and of course on retail. But we kind of do need to just be like, well, what are we expecting them to do? You know, when I'm complaining and I'm saying like, oh, you know, they're just neglecting Cataclysm. Well, really, they're not, are they? I mean, they're just giving it time to breathe to a certain extent. We know Firelands is imminent, but what do we expect them to do? The one thing I do expect them to do is follow through on what they say they're gonna do, like Heroic plus Dungeons. Too little too late, in my opinion. I literally see zero reason to put any development time into them now, when we're only going to have a few months of Firelands, a few months of Dragon Soul, and then we're all playing Pandas. I don't really see the point. They've missed the boat. It should have been with Zolgarb and Zolaman. Releasing it now, I don't know. They should better put their time into making MoP a better experience and being like, right, let's just rush through the next two raid tiers, get to MoP, but make it a much, much better experience for everyone. So we need to accept the fact that actually, as long as we get it how it was back in the day and they go out of their way a little bit to make some minor changes where they're needed, then cool. You want new content, it's the wrong place. Even though I don't accept that, because I think they're missing an opportunity to make these older classic expansions that people remember fondly, actually make them even better than they was. Like, that's what I would do if it was my company, but it's not, so whatever. And then when I was talking about changes, so what changes there need to be, when I said what Blizzard needs to change, I meant overall, and that was the cadence. But what they need to change in particular when we're talking about Mists, or MoP, or Mr. Pandaria, I've said it about 4 different ways, is there's some things that you'll really, really hate, and what the modern player base just won't like, and that's things like the sheer amount of dailies that there are to do, particularly in the first phase. You have to do the dailies because there's no tabards. You even need to get reputation to be able to spend Valor points. It's not just like, oh, I'll ignore the reps because I'll get Valor point gear. It's like, well, no, some of the Valor point gear you need is gated behind reputation that you can't get from doing PvE content in dungeons or in heroics or whatever. You have to physically do dailies, and it's a lot of them. Now, this is kind of a love-hate thing, because many of us that just enjoy doing group PvE content don't really want to be running around doing dailies. I hate dailies personally. If I have to do them, I'll do them. Tol Barad, prime example. I've done it on 2-3 characters to get the trinket, but I didn't enjoy doing it. It wasn't a good experience. I almost felt like I was being held hostage. So they need to add the tabards to be able to get the reps, so it gives people options. It's not something they've done back in Mist of Pandaria, but it's something they recognised because it was never as bad as it was in MoP ever again. Also, it's an extremely alt-unfriendly expansion, and believe me, it really, really is. A part of the problem, as you can guess, is the legendary questline. They did later add catch-up mechanics to be able to get the sigils that you need, for example, a lot quicker, but still, it was still only so fast. Re-rolling towards the end of the expansion or even halfway through the expansion feels horrible, and trying to keep multiple characters up to date, you miss a week, it just feels really, really painful. So they need to address the legendary questline to make the game alt-friendly, so people can just raid on lots of characters without having to sink loads of time into keeping up to date with something that's so important, because it's not just the legendary cape you get from it. You get a socket, you get a meta gem, which is super powerful that everybody's going to need. So this is probably something that's going to need significant amounts of development time to work out what they're going to do with it and how they're going to implement it, but almost having it a bit like warband wide. So take some inspiration from retail and how well the warband system's been received by pretty much everyone. Have the Black Prince rep account wide, have the rewards account wide, so you can just go and buy the meta socket, you can buy the cloak, you can even up the price on them so they are quite costly for alts, but you don't need to do the whole quest chain all the way through from start to finish on every character, because yeah, no one's going to be starting new characters in the last phase. And actually, the last phase is the best time to start new characters because you get the Timeless Isle and you get lots of catch-up gear, which is bind on account. And like, it's a good time. But the thing that makes it a bad time is the legendary quest line. And then the last one, and it's the big one for me, flying. Now, what we've been used to is you travel around on foot in the new zones, and then you unlock flying when you're max level or whatever. So let's say Wrath of the Lich King, where you get cold weather flying. And then you can buy a cold weather flying tomb that you then send to your alts, and they can fly through that leveling experience. That's not in Mr. Pandaria. You cannot learn flying until 90. There's no bind on account item that you can buy or anything like that. And that's another thing. And I'm not going to say it makes it alt unfriendly, but it just makes it far more painful than it needs to be. So again, something else that would need to be implemented and thought about. And really, it's all of the alt unfriendliness of Mr. Pandaria that needs to be thought about, because the rest of it is actually really good, apart from class balancing. Now, many people will say, oh, MoP is really well balanced, but trust me, it's not. And actually, it could probably end up being one of the worst expansions for class stacking ever, because Warlocks are out of this world, and you're going to be stacking warriors for banners just to buff your warlocks even further. It won't be a fun experience for any of those mid to lower end of the pack, you know, in terms of damage wise, and no one can really get near the warlocks. I've got to be honest, some of the damage breakdowns when you look on bosses is absolutely ridiculous. There's videos from back in the day where warlocks were topping damage on bosses literally with no gear on, and Blizzard knew about it, and they was like, well, you know, it's Siege of Orgrimmar now, we'll wait until we get to the WoD pre-patch. So it's already a known issue, an issue that will need addressing. Now, whether you nerf warlocks, whether you change buffs, or you bring everyone else up to the same sort of standard, I don't know, but I'm worried about it, because in Cataclysm, it's not really been like that. Yes, Unholy DKs were quite powerful to begin with, and everything kind of evens out. Yes, Fire Mages are doing crazy damage on certain bosses, but actually Cata in terms of damage is pretty balanced, whereas MoP is the complete opposite. Now, I'm not saying all you're going to take is warlocks and all you're going to take is warriors, but there is just significant difference between the classes, and it will be very apparent even when we get a beta, which, again, I would expect a beta even being pretty soon, because by the time Dragon Soul's out, that's not going to last long. They're going to need a fairly significant sized beta test for MoP because of all the new systems like talents, pet battles, just everything that we've already spoke about in this video. So really around Christmas time or just after Christmas, which is not that far away. Oh, that's made me really depressed thinking that I've got to buy loads of presents again. But yeah, a few months and I honestly could see us in the beta tests for MoP, and we'll very quickly see how overpowered things are in raids. In heroics and even challenge modes, there's big metas. And again, that's another thing we want. We want the challenge modes to actually be balanced and fun, but like Brewmaster Monk, Disc Priest, and then take a Warlock in there as well. And actually, you'll just be selling runs. You don't even need anyone else. And then my final point was going to be what should be built upon. And what I mean by this is have a look forward and think about what's in MoP and what could they quite easily build on now. So that would be challenge modes as an example. If they're going to do Heroic Plus, they should just do challenge modes. And I know I sound like a broken record because I've said this so many times, but it's the perfect time to actually look forward to the next expansion and be like, what can we actually get people accustomed to straight away? They bring challenge modes in, then that gets people excited for the next season of challenge modes, which would be MoP. Could they be like, there's not a lot going on between Firelands and Dragon Soul, let's put in pet battles early? How easy would it be for them to switch that system on in the current client? I don't know. I'm not a developer. I've not got the answer to that. But if it was something that was possible, looking forward at what's coming and then trying to put some of that in early to fill out content in kata is what I would do if I was Blizzard. And the big one for me would be flex raiding. Flex raiding was probably one of the most well-received systems in Mr. Pandaria back in the day, and I think it will be again now. But when we're talking about things to build on, flex raiding wasn't there straight away. Flex raiding didn't come till later. In fact, we'd be waiting until the very end of MoP before we even see flex raiding. That's something that they could put in during the pre-patch to actually enjoy Dragon Soul in a flex raid, and obviously then all of the future raids as well, because trust me, when that went in during Siege of Orgrimmar, there was hardly anyone that was against it. It really just enabled more guilds to raid together and not worry about raid size, and it was a step up from LFR. Obviously, it sits between LFR and normal. It's not like retail raiding where I don't mean flexes and you can do normal and heroic in any size. It's actually its own raid system altogether, which I'll obviously cover in a video at some point. But that's just my thoughts on the current state of Classic and really what they should be doing going forward. And ultimately, yes, we want Mist. Can't say it any other way. Yes, we want it to come, but they need to do it right. And they really need to take a long, hard look at the things that are wrong with it and fix it. And then we could possibly have one of the best MoP experiences ever. So as always, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.